Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. We help sales managers and leaders make more money, save time, and become kick-ass leaders of their sales teams. And that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast. We are here to give you the tools and tactics to build a well-oiled sales machine and teach you the mental toughness skills so you can show up confident, focused, emotionally in control, and ready to energize your team. It's time to talk sales leadership and mental toughness. Let's get into today's episode. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to today's podcast. As usual, I am fired up to talk about this topic today, and it's based on a book that I actually just finished a couple days ago, and I wanted to dive into your mind a little bit and shift your perspective on the way you approach business and life, because this book made me do exactly that. I mean, I was actually looking through the number of highlights that I had in this book, right? I actually read it on my iPad, and so took my little, iPen or whatever the heck you call it, and was highlighting. I felt like every other sentence in this book. And so if you haven't heard of the book, 10X is easier than 2X, I recommend that you pick it up. It's written by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. And, as a leader in sales, as a leader of a business, as just a leader in life, it's interesting to pick up all these different types of books that you can pick up. And this one was actually recommended to me by my wife. And then funny enough, I was reading it on my way to Arizona a couple weeks ago. And I know I've mentioned on this podcast before, I'm part of this mastermind group with 29 other business owners. And we dive into just how we approach things and optimizing everything we're doing. And I was on my flight to Phoenix, where our last live mastermind event was, reading this book. And then I get there, and a friend of mine named Caitlin, who's in the mastermind group, we're sitting next to each other very first day. And somehow this book comes up in conversation. And I said, I mentioned, I don't know if I said, like, I'm reading this book right now and it's called 10X. And she goes, oh my gosh, I love that book. And so we started down this path. And I swear, when Caitlin and I were talking, it became a theme for us of like, how do we 10X the things we're doing instead of 2X? And maybe you've heard, other people out there, like, was it Grant Cardone has, I think the book is called 10X. But this concept floats out there. But I love the way that, Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy kind of describe this, right? Because 10X, I think, can be scary, right? If you think about in your role right now, if you were to 10X sales, right? I don't know what that number is for you, but if you go from 2 million to 20 million, right? You 10X it, like, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, like, is that even possible? And we start to go down this path of finding the things like that are going to get in the way, right? The things that are going to stop that from happening, instead of like thinking about the possibilities of things that could happen to make that a reality. And so anyway, this book became a little theme as Caitlin and I talked, and as I approached the questions that I needed to ask this group. And so I want to share some examples with you, a couple of takeaways that I took from this book. I hope you actually pick it up. I will put a link in the show notes to this book as well. But here's a quote I want to read from the book, and I got it on my phone here. Obviously, if you're listening to this on podcast, you can't see me holding up my phone right now with the actual book and quote on it, but it says this. So, quote, he said, most people are afraid to commit fully to the 10X process because it inevitably requires letting go of your current identity, circumstances, and comfort zone. Going 10X means you're living based on the most intrinsic and exciting future you can imagine. That 10X future becomes your filter for everything you do. And most of your current life can't make it through that 10X filter. What got you here won't get you there. End quote. Right? That's powerful. What got you here won't get you there. And even in that just short quote, it talks so much about like this exciting future. It's like the biggest thing you can imagine. And then making a new filter for everything that you do at work and at home. Does it meet the requirements to allow me to 10X this part of my life or this business or my sales or whatever you have in your head right now, or not? And if not, then I don't do it. If it does, yes, I choose to do it. But it's also, I think, super important of letting go of your current identity. circumstances, and comfort zone. And, in my business, I talk a lot about that a lot, right? If we want to be great leaders in every area of our life, right, we have to start acting, behaving, and thinking differently. And if we're going to 2X or 3X or 4X or 10X our business, we have to start doing things differently, don't we? Right? We have to let go of some of those things holding us back. And I'll share a story as I kind of get into today of when Caitlin and I were initially talking about this, and we were asking these big questions, right? Of how do we 10X this or 10X that? I had some fears kind of crop up in me, right? And I had these thoughts, these sayings that pop into my head that I've thought and I said over and over again in my past that I, over the years, have had to learn to let go, right? And I continue to work through to this day, because one thing about being a leader is that it's not you're void of difficulty or challenges. It's not like it disappears. The way you look at them changes and shifts, right? And I know I've said this on podcasts before, but when I describe someone who's mentally tough or has a strong mindset or is resilient, the way I simply describe it is we're going to get thrown off track. I get thrown off track. But the mentally tough ones, resilient ones, they train themselves that when I'm thrown off track, I'm not going to be off track for a very long time. In fact, I'm going to work right on my belief systems. I'm going to work on my self-talk. I'm going to work on the people I rely upon and build a great network of people, like all the things we teach. I'm going to work on those things, train myself so that I'm not thrown off for 5 weeks. I'm only, thrown off for 5 days. And then I'm going to continue working so that 5 days becomes 5 hours. And that I'm going to keep working so that 5 hours becomes 5 minutes. That's resiliency, right? When they say get back up after you've been knocked down, it's how long are you lying there? And let's shorten that time to continue doing the things. That's that 10X mindset that we have to have, and the way we, again, act, behave, and think differently. And that's what got me so excited about reading this book. It kind of reinvigorated me, re-energized me. That's why I want you to go read it, and I'll talk about these couple things today. Now, the first thing I found really, really interesting about this was there's this concept in the book of want versus need. And I found this super interesting, right? Want versus need. And it went on to talk about I need to, we use the phrase of I need to increase revenue by 10%, or I need to increase revenue by 50%, or whatever the number is, right? I need to do this. And the thing that was interesting about the book is that they said, isn't it interesting when you talk about, I need to do something, I need to go to the gym, I need to do this, I need to do that. Because side note, real quick, by the way, this 10X mindset, if you're not, I've kind of talked more about from a sales perspective, right? We'll blow up our business and all these things, right? That's one aspect, but it's also I want to 10X my experiences, my travel experiences, right? I want to 10X the time I have with my family. It's taking our life, every part of our life, and just taking it to the next level, and not just the next level, but thinking even bigger beyond that, right? So don't just apply it to sales. But this want versus need. It said when you need something, I need to do this, I need to do that, what comes behind it is you have this pressure to justify it, right? I need that thing, and it's okay, why do you need that? Because that's what people ask, why do you need that? It's it's because of this and this, and if we want to pay big commissions and bonuses, then we have to make this happen, or blah blah blah. We have to feel like we have to justify it. And the point that Dan and Benjamin make in this book is when you shift over to I want this, right? I want to double sales. I want to travel over here. I want the car. I want the house. I want the vacation. I want the whatever it is. Something interesting happens where when you go to that place, you leave behind, and you have to make this conscious choice, but leave behind the pressure to justify it. Why do you want that? Because I want it. Right? I want to experience life in a whole different way where no one else is going to experience it the same way. Why? Because I want that. We don't have to justify this anymore, right? And I get there's a plan behind it, and we have to be diligent and have the steps we need to take. But I found that really interesting, right? Of in my business, talking very personally right now, right? There's certain things, and the reasons I got in this business, right? First and foremost, it's to impact millions of lives around the world, and to help people get out of their own way, and help people deal with the things that are really holding them back. That's why I got in this business in the first place. I also got into this to show my kids what's possible, right? So if they want to go accomplish something and do something, that's why I got in this business too, because the possibility lies before us. Again, things we have to do to make that happen, but it lies there before us. I also want to create these experiences with my family. And I like cars and I like houses, and I don't like them that much, but I like cool things and I want to go on these great vacations. I want to do that. And if you were to ask me, in the past that reading this book, it was interesting. It's I need to go on that vacation. I need to do this. It's this book was interesting in helping shift my mindset to if I want it, that's okay. And I don't need to justify it to anyone else, because the reality is a lot of people don't understand why I want that anyway. So why do I feel the need to justify it? So interesting to think about, right? And I think about for you listening right now, I wonder what you want, right? I get there's certain things that you need, right? We need money to, pay our bills and do all those sorts of things, right? But, I want my kids to go into college and not have 1 ounce of debt coming out. I want to 10x my revenue. I want to upset the entire industry. I want to disrupt the whole thing. Well, do you need to do that? Why do you need to do that? Because I want to, because the opportunity lies right there. And I think when, Caitlin and I were going through that of wanting and going through this 10x mindset, it started to get me to think bigger about the possibilities, not the justification and pressure to justify why I needed to get there. It's just because I want it. And it drives me to action. So it's super interesting, right? It's just some food for thought for you of letting go of that pressure that you need to act, behave, keep your dreams at a reasonable level, because if you go too big, people will think you're nuts and won't understand it, and they'll just keep asking you why, instead of shifting it. Maybe think of Caitlin and I going after boom, big time things of what we want to dream about. So I found that really interesting with that book. The second thing that I found really interesting, there's another part of the book, I don't have the exact quote, but it's really this concept of to 10x, to go to that whole nother level, right? So you have to look at what you're doing, and you have to constantly bounce everything you're doing off of, will that task is going to give you minimal gains, the 2x, or is it going to give you these massive gains of 10x? For all you sales managers and leaders out there, I wonder if you've ever thought the phrase, why in the world did I sign up for this? I know I have. And the reality is that leading a team of salespeople can be challenging, right? Just figuring out how to motivate each person and keep the pipeline full, and just dealing with the pressure of delivering the month after month results that your company's requiring. And call me an optimist, but amidst the challenge, amidst sometimes the frustration, we have this opportunity in front of us to really impart our knowledge, right? And to leave that legacy on our team and just achieve next level results. And that's why today I want to personally invite you to our free masterclass training, where I'm going to share the exact secrets, the exact framework that I teach sales leaders around North America to help just take you to next level results for you and your team. And it's actually the exact framework that I taught one of my clients who, over a 12-month period, tripled organic revenue growth and increased margin by 30%. So I want to invite you to that masterclass. You can click the link below or head over to mattphillipscoaching.com/webinar. And can't wait to see you in the training. And again, it's just this different way of thinking and approaching things. And this one, I think, is so important because for me, I don't know if you're the same way, but sometimes I fall in love with the way things are and the way we've done things in the past. And maybe if that's not you, maybe you have people who follow that within your company or within your team. But I tend to fall in love with that too, of it's working. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Instead of saying, oh, wait a minute. If I want to create these amazing life experiences and get to this level of revenue and 10x everything about my life, I've got to be the one looking in the mirror and challenging constantly the way I'm doing things. And it's not to make things, when I first read this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to take so much time. And then I got to build all these new processes and systems, right? So I'm getting in my own way already. But as I read further and just really reflect upon it, it's not that I'm creating all this extra work. It's I'm getting myself focused on the right work because we all have lots of stuff to do. I love telling the story about my sister-in-law, Kylie, and man, I love her and her family, and you've married two boys. This is a great family. And I remember, well, this is a number of years ago now, but I called her one day and I said, "Hey, Kylie, how are you?" And her answer was, "I'm busy. Things are busy." And I said, "Well, that's good." I said, "Everybody's busy." I said, "How are you?" Right? I want to know like how she was, right? So, but I think it was such a good illustration of like there's this, I don't know, just gold star you get if you're busy, if you're running around with your head cut off, if you've got lots of stuff to do, and it's like, "How was your day?" It was super busy, right? Or do you have time today for a meeting? Like, no, I'm super busy. And it's something I've learned in running my own business is you can't operate from that mindset, right? Now, if you're busy focused on like these amazing, huge things that are going to really, really drive your business and life forward, okay, that's a great use of time, right? That's a good excuse to say you're busy, but we have to be so careful, right? If we have to look at what we're doing, bounce up again with this 10x mindset, this dream that we've come up with. Like, is this action I'm about to take, is it really going to 10x my business? And so, I'll give you a prime example. So we'll take something from a different lens, right? So you know about the sales leadership program that we have and the one-on-one coaching that we do and workshops, things like that, right? You know that. Well, when Caitlin and I were talking, I'm sure all of you are not really aware, but I've always had an athlete side of my business, right? And so a couple months ago, we launched this, what we call the Ultimate Student Athlete Leadership Program. And it's really targeted at to help high school and club athletes, really age 14 to 18, 14 to 19. And I've seen a huge gap, me growing up in athletics, around, the mental side, right? It's like, what does that even mean, right? So, be mentally tough. Like, what the heck does that even mean, right? And how do I train that? Because in athletics growing up, I didn't really train that. It was just, go physically train, right? And so I see this huge gap. And then with the mental health of our children and these high schoolers today, this is just a huge passion of mine. Like, how do we help these kids advance, right? And how do we go work with these high school coaches and club coaches to help equip them to train their student athletes with these things? Because that's going to make a huge difference, not only in their athletic endeavors, but in school and ultimately in life. And so this is a huge passion project. So Caitlin has a business that is very, very different than mine, but works in schools, things like that. So she and I were talking, and she posed this question to me. She goes, like, what level of revenue do you want to get to with this, right? How many people do you want to get to? And I said the number, and I won't say it on here, but she said, that's too small. I think you should be this. And she 10x'd it. She goes, what would it take to make that happen? And that became the frame of everything for those 3 days I was with the mastermind group. Of like, I would walk around the room and I'd be like, okay, so with this student athlete program in mind, I would ask everyone in the room, like, okay, what is the first thing that comes to your mind of like, how do I get to as many people as humanly possible, the quickest way possible? Like, what action do I need to take? Like to 10x this thing. And it shifts the way that you think. And so the answers I would get from these individuals who are super smart, changing lives, doing really well in their businesses, I mean, they even blew me away. But it got me focused on going bigger, right? Being grander, building something even bigger than I imagined. And it all started with just looking at this book and having these conversations with Caitlin and others in the mastermind to get me thinking bigger, right? That I want this to happen and I'm going to take the steps necessary. And even today, I found myself floating in this place of just kind of that 2x mindset, right? And the thing is, like, at 2x, like if you 2 times your business, that could be amazing, right? There's nothing wrong with it. And that's what the book says too. It's like, there's nothing wrong. It's not a right or wrong. It's just, if you want to go 10x, things have to shift. Things have to be different. You have to start thinking about these things differently. And I found myself today thinking a little bit small, right? And I was kind of sending these individual messages out to certain people. And I caught myself and I'm like, wait a minute, like I got to think about this differently. I have to go back to the conversations I had and make some shifts going forward. So it's just a super interesting lens to really think through. I had a one-on-one coaching call today, actually, and I didn't talk about the 10x versus 2x mindset with this individual, but it was really in alignment with this. Of he's actually, they're looking at shuffling some accounts around. There were some promotions in the organization from from a salesperson to a sales manager and a leader. And so with that, there has to be some shuffling of accounts, right, to get the right people working them. And our conversation started with, well, this is the way we've done it. So I'm going to assign it to this person. They're going to keep doing the same thing. And I said, whoa. Hold on a minute. I said, what if we took a step back for a minute and we really challenged the strategy behind this account plan, right? What if we kind of took any blinders off? We took any preconceived notions, anything we've done in the past. What if we just took it away for a minute? And we started asking questions around like, okay, if we would start over, how would we build this? What could be the best strategy to like capture the most revenue possible? Like, what questions haven't we asked the client that we need to understand to figure out what that upside is? Like, it started leading to all these questions. But my whole point with this individual, and by the way, this is why I love coaching, right? And this is why I have a coach, because as a coach, I see things differently, right? I'm able to ask different questions. You as a leader, you're probably able to ask questions differently of the people you work with, right? And then my coaches, for me, give me a different perspective to 10x what I'm doing. But these questions with this individual this morning led us to come up with a number of different questions that we don't know the answer to. That if we don't get the answer, we don't know what action to take. And if we did take action upon it and did what we always do, right, what we've done in the past, I'm telling you right now, like, I don't think it's going to have the big impact that he thinks. Like, I don't, because I don't think we have the right answer to the question. Actually, two questions in particular. We don't have the right answers. So I don't know what the impact is. I think unless we get those, I think we're wasting people's time, right? That's not the mindset that's going to get us that whole next level. And so with one of my clients, especially around account plans, this is something I'm doing right now, going out and whiteboarding these things out and saying, okay, but what are we not asking? Where are we not thinking? Like, when have we challenged this, challenged that? I mean, let's think outside the box to make that happen, because that's what's going to grow wallet share or revenue, however you want to describe it, or market share. It takes a different way of acting and thinking. So I wanted to share these couple of things with you just on this podcast today and really challenge you that, again, 2x, like growing your business by like the 10% or 15%, there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. If you're ready to like go maybe 3x, 4x, 10x, I want to challenge you a little bit today to look at what you're doing and ask the questions that I'm asking, or sit with your equivalent of Caitlin and have that person ask you those questions, or call me. I'll ask you those questions to really get you thinking bigger, grander, better, because that's where the growth is going to come. This is actually a topic that I actually leave on Monday. Not that I'm recording this on a Monday, so I leave in a week, I should say. You probably listen to this on any random day, but I leave next week for Fort Lauderdale to work with one of my clients, and this is something we're going to talk about, right? Of how do we start thinking differently? Because it's, the old, what's the old saying about the definition of insanity? It's like doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. And that's what this book did for me. It just helped me rethink a little bit and put it in a way where I really liked it, right? Sometimes I read some of that 10X stuff, and this is no offense to, anyone publishing stuff like that, like Grant Cardone or anybody like that. But sometimes I'm kind of like, yeah, it's too out there for me. And that's my fault, right? Of me putting limitations on myself. When I read this book, though, that 10X is easier than 2X, it just made a little more sense to me. It described it in a way where I'm like, that makes sense, right? Because I'm a process guy. Let's be pretty blunt with it, right? Like, I'm thinking 50 steps ahead, and I should be on step 2, but I'm on step 50 in my head. And it just helped kind of help me look at this a little bit differently. It's your personal life, it's your business, it's your sales team, it's whatever you might be doing, right? I want to challenge you, as I'm challenging myself, of how do we think with this 10X mindset and look at what we're doing and make sure we're ensuring that the actions we're taking, the steps that we're doing, the business that we're building, the sales that we're going after, the account plans that we're building, everything we're doing is in that alignment with 10X thinking. Because I believe by doing that, we're going to reach goals that we think are unachievable, silly, but it starts with that different level of thinking. I want to challenge you with that today. So that's your goal for the rest of this week, month, life, if you will, to think of that 10X mindset and really challenge yourself to kind of work through some of those things holding you back. So, like I said, we will put the link to the book in the show notes so you can take a look at that. Maybe you get a different perspective. I'm sure I pulled many things away from this book. I just wanted to share those two with you. And I'm sure you're going to pull away a lot of stuff as well. But as one of my mentors says, success leaves clues, right? And so getting to read the stories that are in this book as well, along with, other books that are kind of in this realm, I think are huge. So we can take those, leverage those, and accelerate our success as well. At least that's what I'm after. And I know because you listen to this podcast, you are after the same thing. So go pick up the book, read it. I hope you enjoy it. And hey, can't wait to see you on the next podcast. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator, mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.